Hello, creeps. It's me, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper, and you're listening to Chronicles from the Crypt.
Hello, kiddies. It's me, Casualty Chris.
And this is Father Malone.
And we are the hosts of Chronicles from the Crypt, a twice-a-month look at the horror anthology series Tales from the Crypt that aired on HBO from 1989 to 1996.
Now, in each of these podcasts, we do 2 episodes of the television series. In between seasons, we do bonus episodes, but this is the last season, so there'll be no bonus episode. You missed out.
Or you could just go listen to it at chroniclesftc.com.
Oh, yeah, that's a better thing to say.
Well, one of us is thinking ahead, the other one is being smarmy. It's okay.
Yeah.
It works out.
Well, that's what I do.
Exactly. So on this episode of Chronicles from the Crypt, we are taking a look at the first episodes of Season 7, Episode 1 and 2, Fatal Caper, and Last Respects.
Greetings, travel fiends. It's so exciting being here in London. I'm already feeling right at tune. Care to join me for a little fright-seeing? Or maybe we could find a nice pub and tuck into some authentic flesh and chips. Or we could go check out my English scaritage. I bet you didn't know your pal, the Crypt Keeper, was one of the crown ghouls. Did you, creeps? I've got all kinds of skeletons in my closet, which is kind of like the family in tonight's tale. You could call it Father Knows Beast, but I prefer Fatal Caper.
So Fatal Caper aired April 19th, 1996. It is directed by none other than Bob Hoskins. Bob Hoskins actually stars in the episode as well, along with Natasha Richardson, Greg Wise, Leslie Phillips, and James Saxon. Episode follows 2 brothers who are trying to figure out the fortune of their wealthy father, all the while a woman is there doing things.
Yeah.
This is a problematic episode. If you are not into virtue signaling or people being upset about things, maybe fast forward a couple minutes. If not, this episode does something that an episode of the show already did, which is not handle the treatment of trans characters very, I wouldn't say respectfully, but in a way that makes me feel good.
Yeah, I mean, this and the previous episode sort of suffer from this. And then you didn't realize, nobody realized that this was the other person that they've been talking about for the entire episode because they've actually changed their gender. In both of them, it was a guy who becomes a girl, right?
So the episode that you're talking about, it's a man who is cross-dressing. In this episode, it is a man who has transitioned to a woman, but didn't have the bottom surgery. Because that's like what the whole gag at the end of the episode is based around is, oh my god, Natasha Richardson's character has a cock. Aren't trans people fucking weird? That's what this episode should be called.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's not handled tastefully necessarily. It's just, to me, the worst part of it is that it's just so lazy. It's more of a crime because it doesn't seem like they're out to take down trans people or say trans people have a problem or anything. I don't think either of the episodes did. I just think that you've got no one else on screen. Like 5 characters. They're talking about one other character who doesn't show up for the entire thing. One of those characters is going to be the character, but some of the characters are familiar with that character and know what they look like. So how do we get around that? Oh, we'll change their gender. It's lazy and stupid. Nobody would. I don't care how much surgery she had. The brothers would recognize their brother. Like that on a fundamental storytelling level is a fucking failure.
Well, it's kind of like another piece of fiction that uses this kind of trope. It's kind of like Ace Ventura. Like, there is no way that you can tell me that people didn't recognize this character who looked like another character when, like you've said, plastic surgery is only so good. It cracks me up how film, like so many things that they kind of misuse, how they misuse plastic surgery. I mean, they misuse it in the last episode that we were talking about. This guy all of a sudden looks like Humphrey Bogart. In this episode, it's the same thing, but all of a sudden, a male character who we don't know who he looks like to begin with becomes Natasha Richardson.
It wasn't going to occur.
It's not believable.
Like, in any way. That to me is like I said, the true crime of the episode. Now, I do want to point out, weirdly, once we get to England, they start adapting Tales from the Crypt comics. This is a Tales from the Crypt. It's number 20. The script was by Al Feldstein. Art was by Jack Kamen. Amazing artwork. The story in the comic has zero to do with this. This is entirely invented by whoever wrote this episode. I would say because the Tales from the Crypt was too close to other episodes that they've done, but then this is just an amalgam of a dozen episodes we've seen. In the comic, it's a bunch of friends, like college-age friends who are bored, and they perform a seance just as like a lark, and the room gets all misty, and the friends keep disappearing until there's one guy left. I don't know, man. They end up burying him somehow, and then it turns out to be a big hoax. Like, they just wanted to scare this guy really bad, and so they bury him, and then they've used a coffin that was previously used, and when the gravedigger approaches them, they say, you buried our friend. He got buried by the guy. You buried our friend. You got to dig him up. He's like, no one's going near that. That coffin was covered in leprosy, and anyone who touched it now is a leper. And they had all touched it. What bearing does that story have on the fucking piece of filmed entertainment we were given?
Nothing.
Nothing at all.
But they use the same name.
Yeah. What? Why say it's adapted at all? It literally has zero to do with it. Like, other ones you could say, oh, well, they took it in a zombie direction and they decided to do a whole other thing here. But that's not the case here. This is just a free adaptation, and blah.
And it is a lazy adaptation at that. Actually, I guess it's not even an adaptation, is it? It's a lazy story that we've seen told 4 times now. Variations on this story. When I was watching this episode, I just kept thinking to myself, okay, so they moved to England, but Tales from the Crypt is just back up to its old bullshit again.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but, I see Scott Nimifro's name as the story editor here, so I gotta wonder if these scripts weren't, written for a 7th series in America, and then that didn't happen, and then this somehow presented itself, that they could go make them in England. So you had the same group of writers who've been churning out the last couple of seasons of the show, giving us yet another one, except now we're dressed up in old England.
Well, yeah, the addition of the show being filmed in the UK does not seem to do anything other than change the accent of all of the characters.
It does that. I will also say, however, because I noticed this in all of the episodes I've seen so far, the production value is through the roof because it's all location filming, because they have all these great locations to go film at, as opposed to in Los Angeles where 90% of the episodes were filmed on a soundstage. So these episodes, as hit or miss as they are, they look better to me. Obviously it looks like an English production. If you presented this series to me with a different title on it, I would believe that it was a whole other thing and not Tales from the Crypt at all.
Oh, I completely agree with that.
Yeah, but I do like the way it's filmed. It's not as sort of glossy and shiny as the American one was, and it seems a little more serious. It actually, the thing it reminds me of is the Tales from the Crypt movie from '71.
I would agree with that 100%. 100%. That's what it feels like. It really feels like those Amicus films.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that.
No, I think it's not an improvement, but I think it's a good, separate direction for the series. But you still have to give us a good goddamn story, and you have a treasure trove of stories to pull from. Don't give us something like this, particularly not as the lead off.
Well, that's the fucking insane thing, right? And that's something that I think we have really had a hard time kind of wrapping our heads around. At least I have, and I would assume you probably have as well. The first episode of the first season of this show is still our favorite episode. At the same time, it's our favorite episode. And we came to that conclusion separately. It's not like you said it and I was like, oh yeah, me too. It's like, no, that's my favorite episode. That's your favorite episode. There are a lot of things playing into why that's the case. And every season's first episode, you would think would be this fucking grand slam of a story to really start the season out right. And those episodes have just been getting worse and worse and worse as the show has gone on. Like, the quality has fallen off in these first episodes of the season so hard that now we're at the point where it's just a complete retread of something we've seen before.
I don't think anyone there at the time could recognize a good episode anymore. Obviously, you're going to stick Robert Zemeckis' episode at the end of the season, like as the big finale, because it's Robert Zemeckis and it's his show. But as far as being able to like look at what you've been given and pick what order they should play in, they had no idea. And I don't know. It's just a continued laziness on the part of the writing staff of the show, I think.
We are a far cry from cutting cards. Let's just put it that way.
Indeed, we are.
We are a far cry from The Man Who Was Death.
The entire series has been a slow progression away from their best episode.
And like it's in such a way that it's so obvious we can't help but mention it.
Yeah.
It's not like the quality is like up and down. It is steadily declined with one or two bright spots.
Yeah, and like I said, obviously they couldn't even see the good ones when they had them because they were always just sort of crammed in with the rest of them. Not that it's going to make the series as a whole any better, but give us something awesome to begin with and something really scary at the end. That's what we need.
We didn't get that here. I wonder, do you think we're going to get that with the next episode? Last Respects?
Totally.
Greetings, infestors. I'll be with you in a moment. I was just putting these gross profits away for safekeeping. You see, boils and ghouls, at Crypt Keeper Financial, we can help you get morgue for your money. Whether it's mutual fiends you want, or cold, horrid cash, we can guarantee you'll coroner the market. I bet you'd be the type who's interested in boo chips. Like tonight's tale. It's about 3 girls who are chopping around for a tax write-off of their own. And a nasty shock option I call Last Respects.
So the episode is directed by Freddie Francis. It is written by Scott Nimmerfro. You just mentioned him. It stars Emma Samms, Carrie Fox, and Julie Cox. And it is about 3 sisters who are given a monkey's paw. And things happen. Monkey paw things happen. Oh, they also own their father's curiosity shop. That is a complete MacGuffin. In the worst way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is... I'm curious, Father Malone, what do you think?
Not good.
Oh, it's real bad. It is so bad that I was tempted to turn it off because I knew where it was going, and it was like, oh, there's another twist and another twist. Like, none of these twists weren't obvious, and we know where this episode is going. Just look at what the fucking Crypt Keeper shows you on the page of the book before the episode starts. That is the ending, and it is... He does it all the time, but this time it's literally the last scene, and it is... The episode's ruined for you.
Oh, yeah. That was real bad. Okay. Were we talking about free adaptation? Yeah, we were. Here we go again. This is Tales from the Crypt number 23, written by Bill Gaines and Al Feldstein, and drawn by Graham Ingalls, another great fucking artist. In the comic, it's a chauffeur for a wealthy family. He marries the daughter of the millionaire. She's underage. He's going to have it annulled. At the same time, she was visiting him in the rain and got sick. The mean father has separated these lovers. She comes down with a cold that turns into much worse, and then she dies. The chauffeur returns, kills the millionaire, and then goes to her tomb. It's a tomb you have to open a door and enter, just to tell her what he has done and how much he misses her. He gets trapped in there. No one comes to rescue him. 30 days later, 2 people open the crypt. They discover him, and they figure that he died maybe a day ago, and he was able to do so by eating the corpse of his underage bride. Monkey's paw.
Yeah, I was about to say, boy, that story was a lot better than this one, wasn't it? You know, I feel like, because this was something we talked about at the beginning, right? We would talk about the original comics, and I would kind of cede the floor to you, because while I have read them, your describing of them is always much more robust than mine. And I think that comes from you reading it as a kid.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
versus me reading it as an adult. I mean, I posted it on our Instagram a while back. I'd like to re-mention it once again. Earlier in the year, Father Malone and I have the same birthday, and we traded gifts. And Father Malone sent me a very thoughtful gift. He sent me a Tales from the Crypt comic book in paperback form. And that was something that you had originally read when you were in your like early years, right?
Like 10.
Yeah. Like, you have a background with these comics, and I can't help but wonder, because we've never really talked about it, how big of a disappointment is it watching this show knowing how little they actually adapted the goddamn comic?
It's interesting because at the time I was watching it, you know, I can't say that I knew every comic that had been adapted, and that's partially because the majority of Tales from the Crypt episodes are based on either Vault of Horror or Haunt of Fear, or more likely than not, shock suspense stories. But I kind of gave them a pass when I was watching it initially because, you know, I felt that, you know, that's good, you know, to take some license with it. Now going back and realizing just how far afield they were with most of their adaptations, and as I said, it is a treasure trove. That the story I just described for Last Respects is fucking horrifying, and there was nobody on their staff, it seems, that was leaning into that direction. It's a fundamental like amnesia that they stopped making a horror show after a little while, and were just like basing everything on ironic twists and occasionally a bit of gore or a monster to, you know, sate the fans. Yeah, I think at this point in my life, now watching it and watching just how much of a missed opportunity they had to draw some of these stories and put them on screen and do them justice, that's a big problem.
And it's disappointing to me as someone who has read the comics, but also expects it to be a show that leans more into horror. Because again, the show is hosted by a literal fucking corpse. I don't expect all the stories to be supernatural, but I expect more than 1 or 2 a season to be. And it's a shame that that's where we are now, because out of the first 2 episodes of this season, one of them has supernatural elements, the other one doesn't. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that the rest of the season may go even less 50-50 than that, because the other seasons, especially the later ones that we've talked about, have as well.
You know, it's funny to me, like, looking back and seeing interviews with people, and, you know, they would talk about EC Comics, and they talk about its sense of humor. And I think, you know, the makers of this series, like, use that as an excuse to kind of camp it up and ham it up. And all of the horror is delivered with tongue-in-cheek. But as I said, if you go back and read those comics, there ain't a fucking thing funny in them. If there's a humor to it, it's that you're reveling in what are usually not talked about dark subject matters. Like, that to me is where the humor sort of rises and falls with the original comics. I think they were all deadly serious. And I'm not saying I need doom and gloom, you know, 22 minutes a week for however many seasons, but it just seems that, as we were just saying, like, somebody along the way forgot that this was a horror show, and you should be disturbed. Like, even without a supernatural element, you can do episodes that, like, gut you, and these guys just weren't interested in that.
I mean, one of the best episodes that we saw that has no supernatural element is our favorite episode of the goddamn show.
Yeah.
Or Three's a Company, which also doesn't feature any supernatural elements whatsoever. It's actually the genre of episodes that we bemoan on a frequent episode basis because they use them so often, the love triangle.
Yeah, and it just shows that when people give a shit, you can take any trope and make it awesome, and not just sort of say that's enough. And I know I've said this a lot on the podcast, but it always feels like it's just enough. Like, yeah, we're giving him this and that, and here's a twist, and isn't this ironic, and, you know, here's some more jokes. And you know what, man? Like, I want the man who was death.
Well, and the other shame here is the involvement of Freddie Francis. Freddie Francis obviously directed the original Tales from the Crypt film.
Yeah.
And this is the episode of the show that he ends up directing. Boy, this is a really bad episode. The monkey's paw is an overused trope, and they don't use it in this episode to any novel or new way. The three sisters end up using it. One of them dies, and then the other one brings the dead one back to life because it turns out she was murdered by the third sister. The end. Like, you don't even need to know anything else about the episode. That all happens in the last 5 minutes. And this is a 20-minute episode. 25-minute episode.
Yeah, not only did he direct that original Tales from the Crypt film way, way back, but he directed a better version of the story they were telling here, because there's a monkey's paw segment in that movie. It's not great, but it's a lot better than this.
On top of everything else, the fact that this episode has an intro, a cold open, is bizarre.
Yeah, a little weird,
because
right?
It's weird because the show has rarely done it, and when they do it, those episodes are exactly what I'm about to say here. It's a 26-minute long episode. You cannot afford to do that.
No.
Right? Like, if that's the way you're going to introduce the monkey's paw, you don't have to spend the first 5 minutes of the episode doing so.
Yeah, we all know it. There's a reason you're trying to innovate around this story, and it's because we all know it.
But they don't. They don't innovate anything, right?
No, not here. Oh, did I mention for the previous episode, Fatal Caper? Skip that one. I just wanted to.
Oh yeah, skip this one too.
Yeah, I just want to say because I'm going to tell you now to skip this one, so you might as well skip the last one.
And it's a shame. It's a shame because I don't think any of the actresses here were given anything to do.
No, I mean I don't want to say like people weren't doing their job here because they were. I think all the acting is fine. The direction is good. I still like the look of the show, but we're just kind of still stuck in season 5 of Tales from the Crypt. That's just what we keep getting.
And what a waste of Carrie Fox, right?
Yeah, man. She ain't in much.
No, shallow grave though.
Yeah.
This, however, real bad.
Yeah. What a drag.
It's a shame. It really is. It's a total shame. And you watch an episode like this and you just have to ask yourself, was anyone in the audience fooled by the twist? And if they weren't, why did you do such an obvious on-the-nose twist to begin with?
I mean, I don't know. Not
just
spectacular.
Lazy.
But hey, those English accents, right?
I mean, I like the English accents and I like the look of the show, but I don't like anything else. I mean, my hope is that the quality of the script will catch up to the way the show looks now.
Yeah. I mean, there's got to be one or two, right? I mean, hopefully.
I would like to believe so. But I haven't seen anything yet that would show to the contrary that we're going to get anything good this season. I mean, again, this season is derided among fans as the lesser of all the seasons.
Well, so far, I got to say, it's comparable. Like, I couldn't tell you just based on these 2 episodes that this is the worst that we've gotten. Like, I'll let you know, but there have been some pretty bad ones.
I would say the quality of these 2 episodes so far, and I have watched the next 2, the quality so far is very similar to season 6. So if people are deriding this season specifically, I don't know why. It's not any worse.
And, speaking to the idea that, like, it's well shot and, like, for me, like, I want it to feel like a film. I don't want it to seem like sets. There are, on the American version of the show, there are episodes that are terribly written, terribly acted, and it all looks like they're on a set. So, as far as I'm concerned, this season already has a step up.
Yeah. It doesn't look like a set. It looks like it's definitely filmed in the UK.
Yeah.
Because it was.
Exactly. Skip this one.
Big time skip. Big time skip. So on the next episode of Chronicles from the Crypt, we're going to be taking a look at 2 more episodes. A Slight Case of Murder and Escape. Yep.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Can't wait. Until then, where can people find you, Father Malone?
You can check me out over at fathermalone.com. You can check out my new podcast, Dark Destinations. It's a travelogue of fictional towns. You can also hear me over on Dreams for Sale, the Twilight Zone 85 podcast that Chris and I do with our good friend Mike White.
As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Casualty_Chris. All the podcasts that I work on are there. Culture Cast, One Season Show, Scary Stories We Tell. They're all there. Go check them out. You can find this podcast on the internet at Chronicles FTC, and we're also at chroniclesfromthecrypt.com. Big thanks as always to John Kassir for the intro to the podcast, and we'll catch you on the next episode.